Ladies and gentlemen and everyone, it's Wednesday. It's January 19th of 2011. Welcome to the Day 9 Daily. It's Day Daily number 243. Oh, I barely made it in time today. It's actually 7:07 p.m. A ghastly 2 minutes late. I smashed my door open trying to get in because Wednesday's always when most of my school time takes place. So I almost didn't end up getting here in time, but of course Day 9 shan't disappoint. I even have my glass of ice water, and you'll notice that there are ice cubes in it, which makes intuitive sense because it's ice water. But I don't know if you guys use the ice trays, because a lot of people, oh my gosh, okay, I'm curious. I was recently staying with a friend who I don't know how to describe this house other than an estate. It was huge. It's like you walk in and the first thing you see is a full glass set of balconies with a pool that's bigger than every house I've ever been in the backyard. And the house wrapped around this pool, and the refrigerator didn't look like a refrigerator. It looked like wood. It looks like a regular door, and you open it up and it even goes plays angelic music so you can get your meat and feel important. And they have one of those auto ice things where you just touch a button and it's how many cubes? It's this self-aware plug-in for the refrigerator that's powered by Skynet. You push it, 8 cubes coming, ching, 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 ching. And they're all exactly volumetrically identical. We don't have that shit. I live in a house with a bunch of guys, right? It's everything that Bachelor Frog comics say, we do that here, totally with the dryer being a dresser and everything. So we have one of those ice trays that you just you fill it up with water, and then you just put it in the freezer, and you just wait, and then it eventually freezes. Alright, so that's about it, right? I don't know if this has ever happened to you when you do this. When you get one of those, ice trays, and you try to get the ice out, so you kind of, you do the regular trick. Here's the trick. You bend the ice tray, you twist it, yeah, and then the ice cubes pop out, and you put it in your drink, but sometimes it doesn't pop out, and recently our fucking ice tray won't give us the ice, so I have to bludgeon it on the counter. I'm just in the kitchen just smashing this, and one pops out, or half of it pops out. So now I don't even want another cube of ice. I want that extra half. Give me my extra half ice tray. Just bludgeon that motherfucker on and it won't come out. I can't get it to come out. So then what ends up happening is that everyone in my house sounds or everyone in my house thinks that I'm murdering someone in the kitchen, that I'm just smashing a face against the countertop, because there's all this noise. And then, as I fill it up with water, that gentle faucet, just kind of cleaning off the blood, all right, he's dead now. Let me just conceal the evidence. I want to be a little sanitary now that I've murdered somebody. Gosh, I can never get this ice out. It's insane. Yeah, so this was hard to do. I want you to know. I am going to drink on air. I think that maybe a broadcasting company would be make sure you drink off air. That damages your image. But you know what? I've earned this. I don't know why they'd say that. It's a PR nightmare. You're thirsty. Chilling. So today, I think there was an announcement I was going to make, but I don't actually remember. So you know what? We'll just take care of all that at the end. Let's go ahead and jump right into it, because again, it's now 7:11. I've been recording for 4 minutes and 4 seconds. I should probably get into the daily. So I think a lot of people were pleased with the Newbie Tuesday that happened yesterday, where we reviewed a ton of games, something like 8 or 9 games for last week's Newbie Tuesday. So I definitely want to be doing one of those for Protoss and Terran again in the future. However, I figured that that's also useful to do in hardcore analysis. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be watching Protoss versus Protoss games between White-rA and Naniwa. And there's 4 of them. All of them are relatively short, but I thought this would be an extremely useful exercise in what I always call the key moment. Because when you're playing at low levels, everyone's screwing things up all the time. You know, like you'll get a blue flame heli in his base and kill off every one of his workers. Yeah! And then he'll get a Dark Templar in your base and start killing workers and you won't notice. So now the game's suddenly even again and you're upset. And then later on, this or that or whatever happens and it just keeps swinging around all over the place. However, in the pro games, generally what happens is people are kind of hanging neck and neck and then one guy just, his legs give out and he's gone. So it's important to try to identify those, because even if you're a bronze, silver, gold, platinum level player, or I guess I can even say diamond now because the masters are the real heroes, even if you're not in the master class, especially in those silver, gold, bronze levels, it's so important that you hit points where you say, where was an advantage lost? When did it swing back into his favor? And sure, if he screws up and you end up evening the game again, and then you fall back behind, then there's 2 points in the game where you really fell behind. So let's go ahead and try to identify those, sort of in rapid-fire succession. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. I'm going to keep it a little bit speedy. I'm not actually going to go through these that slowly, really. Generally, if I'm really trying to hardcore learn, I will blast through it fast once, and then I'll re-go through it again and again and again. However, I figured that we'll just go ahead and go through each thing once. I always like to pause at a moment like this because, their gateways aren't exactly aligned. It looks like White-rA ended up doing no, they look basically equivalent. Looks like Naniwa's a few inches ahead with everything he's doing, so that's not the biggest deal to me. Check my resource counters occasionally. Alright, so both of them are going for a fast gas. I'm going to assume little things, like you're noticing that I'm going through this pretty quickly, right, in the early stages. For someone who has, say, never really played very much Protoss, you might have questions like, well, when is he chrono boosting probes? Is he making a gateway on 13 or 14? Is he going to save any chrono boost for the warp gate and the stalker? That sort of thing. Those are the good questions to have. Generally, I take those questions and I put them away. I just sort of put them in my back pocket. Because what you don't want to do when you're analyzing, when you're trying to figure out when the advantage was lost, was have 150 reasons. Most of the time, it's a big thing that occurred. So we want to find that big thing. If there was no big thing, then let's go to the little things. But why try to start with the smallest increments possible when we can just find this huge, giant elephant in the room? Yes, normally in reference to awkward social situations, but few things to me seem more socially awkward than misanalyzing a StarCraft 2 game. So yeah, both of them seem about the same. I could try to find little differences, like sometimes a player will not have chrono boosted, but I don't care about the little things right now. Oh, White-rA built his second pylon here. Naniwa built his second pylon here. I don't care. I'm trying to find deviations that are significant. Here comes one that's significant. Zealot coming out for Naniwa, nothing coming out for Duckload-rA until his Cybernetics core finished. Not huge, but it's at least something that I'm going to kind of note in my brain. Are any of them getting second gateways? Again, we're going to be watching 4 of these. We're going to be checking out 4 of these bad boys. Alright, so it looks like a robo's going down. Wow, that's actually kind of unusual to see 2 players get their robo at identical times like that. You normally do see deviations. Second gateway. Second gateway. Alright, I'm not that concerned. It looks like, a little push is happening right now. This is quite cute. You don't actually need to pull the probes off there. That was actually unnecessary. Come on, hang in there, little computer. My computer's like loading a 1 kilobyte replay. Oh, too much, too powerful. So that was at least, I guess, significant. But now I'm really seeing a deviation here. Looks like one player is going for the 2 warp gate and then for a fast robo. Another player is going for 3 warp gate and a robo, but I don't really see any colossi. I try to avoid even saying things like White-rA and Naniwa. I prefer it to be that guy and this guy, because you want to look at something in a very pure sense. You want to think about what the race is capable of, not what the person is capable of. A lot of times, Little One even mentioned this to me, that everyone always seems to assume he's going to do something stupid and crazy and insane and never before seen. And a lot of times he'll just do a straight up normal strategy and people will be blown away. in Protoss vs. Terran, people be like, oh, well, he might Dark Templar me, or maybe he'll go mass Void-rA. So they build like 5 extra turrets because it's the little one, and that's what he can do. Instead of thinking, how would I hold off Dark Templar in general? How would I hold off Void-rays in general? So that's why I kind of like to say that, okay, so I'm seeing a 3-gate play come out from red, and I'm seeing a 2-gate fast robo come out from yellow. And that's kind of how I'm going to state it. And I'll look at a lot of the compositions, a lot of these numbers. An Immortal coming up, some Immortals and Stalkers. It looks like a more Zealot-heavy focus. Again, thinking about things in terms of the race and not the player. Makes a lot of sense to get a lot of Zealots if you're doing something like this, because it's hard to get the gas. And that's just me speaking from my experience with, PvP. You kind of need the gas to be able to get all that good jazz out. Actually, I probably would have built another round of Zealots and got that good old range upgrade, because I hate not having range with my Colossi. A 2 Colossi with range push is very good in PvP. Alright, so I'm seeing this happen. I still don't necessarily know. At this point, I don't actually know if one player is ahead or not. I mean, look at the resources. One player getting mostly ranged units and an Immortal. One player mostly getting melee and support units and a Colossus. I don't know. Do you know? I don't. There's nothing wrong with that. Because, honestly, one of the biggest misconceptions that, like, the bronze and silver level players, or even some of those players who, like, just watch Starcraft, don't even play, they picture people at the top being these absolute geniuses who sit there going, like 15 hours for every single replay, stroking our beards. Oh, yes, yes, I'm getting a sensation in my left hip. Yes, indeed. I do think that the Waterstones point to a victory for yellow in the near future. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, hell, it didn't seem that... Whatever. I'll really see what ends up happening in a little bit. Generally, when battles happen, or when the key things occur, or something like a player hull's expanding, this is looking a little bit better for yellow, because he's getting close to that second Colossi popping out, but got to be a little careful because he doesn't have range. This warping on the high ground is pretty cool. We're seeing some micro occur, and this is really, really, really close. And I'm going to end up rewinding and trying to find this sort of key moment, because this is a lot of micro to happen in this battle. And honestly, a lot of times I do this kind of results-oriented. You hear me often say, stop in the game right now, and look at the game state and figure out if you're really ahead or really behind. That's great for super hardcore in-depth analysis. But what's also good is to do things like this, where you kind of say, alright, yellow ended up winning. What is it that happened that caused yellow to win? It's totally fine to use that sort of knowledge. So we're seeing, looks like yellow... Does he have range yet? Nope, we don't see that range going down. I don't really see anything coming out of red either. We see some more warping in action. I wonder if maybe some harassment was good. Looks like the unit composition mix seems pretty good. Am I seeing anything weird? Yeah, wow, I'm seeing a lot less probes from yellow. Now that's kind of interesting. Now, how many of you have had the following experience happen? Where you have 3 bases, he has 3 bases, you kill off 2 of his bases, and you just retreat. So it's his 1 base versus your 3. And in your mind you think, I'm just going to wait for him to leave. I'm going to win. Great. Just going to hang out and wait. Yeah, right, that's very, very, very common sort of thing to do. This seems like a miniature version of that. Instead of with expansions, it's, nope, didn't want to open Ventrilo. Whoopsie daisies, that'd be awesome to just start voice chat mid-daily. So in this circumstance, I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe, Red just thought, well, I'll go in there and mess with his probe line, and then I'll just pull back and play defensively. This is some pretty cool placement here. We see the Warp Prism coming down. So that's kind of the feeling I'm getting. This seems pretty significant. Ooh, yeah, look at that Warp Prism drop. Oh, want to load that up, want to be a little careful. Warp Prisms are pretty cool units. Come on, get there. Alright, got there. And that really is starting to feel like the case, right? So, in my broad statement of this game, and again, I'm going to do 3 more after this. In my broad description of this game, I would say that Red did a build that put a lot of pressure on Yellow, and he tried to do as much damage to the probe line as possible, and when he did so, he ended up pulling back. I do want to rewind and figure out why and how. But still, I wouldn't really point to this. I wouldn't really point to the Warp Prism. People will tend to fixate on the unusual elements of the gameplay. Like for instance, if someone only goes mules or something like that, like, oh, I'm going to kill all my SCVs and only go mules, or if someone does a Warp Prism with Immortal Drop, oh, that's certainly weird. Perhaps that was the contributing factor. Note that when we looked at this game, Yellow was 10 probes behind long before the Warp Prism ever made its cameo appearance, so I'm not going to worry about it. In general, with top-level pro games, there is one key moment, or a very small time in which the key things happened that swung the favor in someone's advantage. So we're going to see this will drop up on the high ground. More things getting warped in. Great. The Immortal is not looking, or excuse me, the Colossus is not looking too hot. It looks like Naniwa can't move his units. Ain't that the truth? Let's go ahead and remove our overlay now that we don't have any of that time spoil. And I really think that we should go back to, kind of the key moment that we identified, which was right as White-rA, aka Red, because we want to think about it a little bit more objectively. It's right when he came up. Now, in a lot of circumstances, we can really dig hard. There was a game between Optic Zero and Noni where I spent about, I'd probably say about 45 minutes looking at a 1-minute portion of the game. Like, just rewinding over and 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 over, focusing in on that one key moment. But let's do it a little bit more broadly. Nothing wrong with doing that. It's important to get a lot of data points. I honestly think it's better to get a lot of small bits of knowledge from a lot of games as opposed to a ton of knowledge from one game. It's better to have more data points, I think. So it looks like with this mix of duck load, I'm seeing, in terms of composition, no melee units. But he does have this observer. So in other words, he's going to use low ground to get a bigger arc. Notice that this is a slightly bigger arc for red than it is for yellow. So that's good. So he's trying to push up here. And it looks like this is the tactic that he's going to use. Yeah, it looks like I'm starting to get the general feel that what Duckload's doing, what Red's doing, is that he is going to be doing a regular old push, but he is always going to have a pylon warped in near the probe line. So, for instance, over here, he would build a pylon there. For here, he would build a pylon, approximately here. If his opponent was at the bottom position, he'd build a pylon there. Seems like a pretty reasonable thing. And he's just going to be hanging out on this high ground. These get trapped. That's a very good job there by Naniwa. And you know what? Often, when you watch a battle, it's kind of like, micro occurred. And sometimes it's hard to be like, that was the specific bit of micro that pulled that guy ahead. But what's, I think, most important to note here is that when I first watched it, I kind of got the feel of, well, I guess there was some crazy control going on. But I'm starting to realize more that this push by White-rA is actually not so micro-based. It's a tactic. We put a ranged army on low ground with a pylon. And our tactic is to keep it on the low ground and to warp in units up here, thanks to our handy-dandy observer, to warp in units up here to do damage to his mineral line. Why is this a good tactic to use? Because he doesn't have many ranged units. He has mainly melee. And look what happens. When Naniwa moves the melee units down the ramp, he just pins them on the south side. If these two force fields weren't here, White-rA would just be pulling his units back and just picking off these zealots. These are basically free zealots. And meanwhile, on the high ground, the bigger amount of White-rA's units can do damage to the smaller amount of ranged units from yellow. Yeah, look at this. Nani's warping in more zealots. Everything on the bottom is ranged, so everything of White-rA's can always fight. With this mix, these can only fight if they wander all the way down this ramp, and this is maybe 10 seconds of walking. That's an extremely long time in StarCraft 2 seconds. So yeah, so he just abuses his ranged army by sitting in this little cul-de-sac. And because this is Metalopolis and this mineral line is close, he can warp in that fashion. On a map like Jungle Basin, where you have a ramp, and your minerals are way back here, I think that this play would be weaker. And yeah, look at that. He's just going to be trying to push aggressively with his ranged units, try to bust this, and then he's going to be kind of targeting probes. We already see that he's getting a little bit ahead in the probe count. Warping in more units. Obviously going to pick off the Colossus. No reason not to take the Colossus out.
Gonna warp into the Stalkers just to do the final money shot. No, come on, you got him, Zealot. You got him, you got him. Alright, I guess he doesn't got him. But again, all melee units cannot very well combat that entirely ranged army. Ooh, that was a nice little warp in by Naniwa. I think that's pretty cool. More things being warped in. You'll note that in terms of army mix, still pretty even. 4 and 2 from Naniwa, 1 and 3 from White-rA, with of course a couple more warp-ins about to pop. But Duckload continuing to shoot at the ranged units, and then it looks like he'll continue to use this little cul-de-sac, and that was a pretty successful little attack. He's going to be target firing some probes. Yeah, nice. So that, in my eyes, is the key thing that he did. All ranged units here, so that way he can abuse warping in, while simultaneously busting smaller numbers of ranged units on the top, and trapping melee units on the bottom. That's a pretty cool little conclusion I think we drew. I like that quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and close that one out and go into the second game. We're going to do some similar sort of analysis. Again, we got 4 games total today. If you have questions for game 1, feel free to write it down, as we will get it eventually. Alright, so I'm going to speed it up, because we obviously want to get through everything today. On this particular map, I'm a little bit less of a fan of trying to do this all-ranged unit, because we can't really exploit the closeness of the mineral line to the ledge. So I'd be a little bit leery of that. So I'm going to be watching this at ×4. Big broad stroke stuff. Broad, broad, broad. Broad, broad, broad. Alright, there's a simulator going down. Faux Dr. Duckload. Oh, right, both of them are doing almost the same thing. I'm actually hardly even looking here. I'm just looking up at the production tab and glancing at my menu map. Yep, Cybernetic scores at the same time. They both get the assimilator at about the same time. Yeah, I know one got it a little earlier than the other. I don't care. There's one Zealot coming out. Again, a little bit surprising. I also want to note that there was a little Zealot Stalker attack that Naniwa did last game. Don't care that much. Didn't feel as key as that battle where White-rA took down 10 full probes. Took out 1/3 of his opponent's economy. There's the zap, 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 exploding. Alright, they're both getting their robotics facilities at the same time. Looks like White-rA is favoring a little bit more of the faster sentry. This mix, again, it looks like he's going mainly for range. There's another good old little sentry popping out. He's getting an observer again. Looks pretty safe. Hey, cool. Naniwa is doing the exact same build. Both players are doing the exact same build, but now this time Naniwa is getting his immortal. And it looks like Duckload-ra, is getting his robotics bay. Both of them are getting a robotics bay. That is kind of interesting. And again, notice how we're suddenly able to use a little bit of our learning from the previous game to make a statement about this one. Last game we learned that White-rA abused this low-ground, all-ranged force, and then warped in Zealots and shot at his opponent's mineral line from the low ground. In this game, White-rA cannot do that, so we see him doing a different style. So that's cool. That's very, very cool that we have managed to engage in learning. So we do see, it looks like there's the Immortal coming out from Naniwa, and I want to point something out right now. We're looking for key moments in all these games. This might be a blunder, getting this Immortal. Maybe getting too many of these. For any of you who have ever played a lot of PvP and are experienced in PvP, you always feel a little throttled on your gas. Look at me talking about gas like it's bandwidth. Ha ha! Do I have latent rage about my ISP? A lot of times you feel like you're just not quite getting enough gas. So sometimes just making 2 sentries instead of 1 doesn't feel like a big decision. Or excuse me, it doesn't sound like a big decision, but it feels huge. You feel it in your gut. Like, he has one more Colossus than I do. Oh, he has range and I don't. Because it just cuts into your ability to do like anything. So this might be something. I would say that is not that's a little subtle of a thing to state. I don't think that that's like necessary by any means at all. There's the Colossus popping out. There's no range. More Zealots. Alright, cool. We have a Colossus coming out from Duckload. Yeah, it looks like both of them are doing almost similar builds. I would come back to the unit counting station, just do a little checkup. Yeah, okay, it looks like 6. It looks like I'm waiting for these to warp in. A lot of Zealots. Both of them have a lot of Zealots. There's another Immortal. There's some more ranged units. Yeah, those are pretty freaking darn close. They're not huge. Like, for instance, a lot of times, if they both come out in a battle and one player barely wins, that's when I start saying something like, were you the culprit, Mr. Immortal? Were you the one that got in the way? You know? Was that what really prevented all that gas from popping out? Naniwa taking a little bit of a step forward. Neither player has even invested in range yet. I really, really love my range. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I do know that I have love for it. So there's the range coming out. Okay, so the more deviations that I see, the more I'm starting to go, now is this the really key moment? Is this going to be the one? Alright, as usual, this is general tactics. Move out with your stalkers, do not move out with the rest of your stuff. Yeah, you know, it might be the case that White-rA just gets more stuff because he has 3 more gateways. Or he has 3 gateways total. Generally, I don't feel like you get that far behind on 2 gateways. Unless your opponent's, like, cutting every single probe and somehow doesn't have to make pylons. Because he's a cheater. So, as usual, this is just general good gameplay, just picking stuff off. It hasn't quite felt like a key moment yet. Both of them are pretty gosh darn close. Still looking around. Not noticing too many more deviations here. In the unit mix, both of them are getting mainly Zealots, mainly Immortals, or excuse me, mainly Colossus. There's that one Immortal from Naniwa. So this feels like it's going to be pretty key, so I went ahead and slowed it down. I'll even remove the production tab. Alright, I think a lot of people are going to have opinions about the key moment in this particular game, or in this particular circumstance. There's the Immortal trying to do a little bit of magic here. We're even seeing from the food count. Oh my goodness, is White-rA ever getting way far ahead? There falls down a Colossus. Okay, advancing forward. Yep, that felt pretty key to me. Grats. An interesting way to say GG, so we'll go ahead and pull that back, because I think that there's a lot of subtlety that occurred in that battle. Because in that last game, it was 2 different builds, so we could sort of clearly see to ourselves, oh yeah, he did this, which gave him that advantage, which he exploited. Boom, you know. But in this game, it's like, well, they're almost doing an identical thing. What's different here? Well, the big thing that I'm noticing is that White-rA has this amazing arc. An amazing arc. And Naniwa doesn't. In fact, all his stuff is largely clustered. There's a couple more things in here. I'm leaving this production tab open. We do see 2 Zealots being warped in, as well as a Colossus, just rallying it out to battle. In terms of the battle, at the front lines, basically identical. Basically identical. So immediately I want to say things like, what are our Colossi shooting? What are our big damage dealers shooting? It looks like nobody did anything particularly egregious. We see White-rA mainly shooting at the Zealots. White-rA has, again, an amazing arc. Now, just as I double-click, look at that curve. Are any Zealots not participating in the fight? This one is not participating in the fight, because he's a little bit behind. But look at this mix by Naniwa. I mean, there were more Zealots in here 10 seconds ago that were not participating in the fight. This really goes to show the importance of getting good unit positioning. I mean, as we look at this, gosh, that is such a great arc. Right around here, I mean, like, these 4 internal Zealots that are kind of hard to identify in this mess. Thank God I have my end button. All those are not even really participating, and all these Zealots are very, very quickly getting up. You see this? These Zealots just sort of swinging back and forth. Also, due to this clustering, these Colossi are taking, like, damage. Like, when this one Colossus fired, it hurt these 2. But I think another thing that's pretty damn key to note in the midst of this battle is how the players replenish. Let's ignore the battle for a moment. This is actually very, very good practice, because with what units you replenish is kind of a big damn deal. Look at this, replenishing with Zealots and Colossi. Of course, Colossus coming out for White-rA. How is he going to replenish? With all Stalkers, not with Zealots. Not with Zealots. Now that the Zealot counts from both players are kind of low, he wants mainly Stalkers, so that way he can really continue to get up in his opponent's base. Look at these Stalkers, very easily able to advance to the front lines. Yeah, and look, Naniwa continuing to get Zealots and Colossus, but we still see White-rA, like, he will not have enough money to make a Colossus when this one finishes. Because he's been making all these Stalkers. We can even see that this is getting close to done. He doesn't quite have enough money. But that is a pretty darn important thing to note. Because with what units you replenish is a big question. Like most Zergs, once they're at 200 food and they lose everything, they're replenished with roaches. It's a really smart decision. But sometimes people kind of get caught in their autopilot where they don't think about what's most useful. So I would say it was the combo of the amazing arc plus the fact that he was replenishing with Stalkers that allowed him to really swing forward. I mean, if more Zealots came out on the field, they could have been evaporated. Generally, the reason people get so many Zealots in PvP is because they're spending all their gas on other things, and Zealots are what you can spend your leftover money on. I mean, Zealots are good, but most of it is actually just a monetary consideration. We're going into Game 3 right now. Going to try to find another key moment. So in Game 1, the key moment was the nice tactic that White-rA used and how he exploited that. That's our little bit of learning. So next time I'd be like, I'm going to go for that little key tactic on the low ground. In that second game, it was, I want to do positioning like White-rA. That's what I want to go for. So again, no deviation in the build. Naniwa getting his usual early Zealot, but I'm not going to call him Naniwa. I'm going to say, okay, a Protoss got an early Zealot. The other one got a little bit earlier of a Stalker, followed by a Sentry. There's the Robo coming down, and oh, look at this. Naniwa's going for a Stargate. Okay, cool. I'm going to slow it down a bit because that's such a gigantic difference. And again, the classic mistake to do here, the most important mistake. That makes it sound like you should make the mistake. No. The worst mistake you could ever make is to start trying to decide who is behead. Who is behead and who is behind. Who is ahead and who is behind. That's kind of a bad thing to do. Because not much has really happened. Because sometimes people will say, oh, Robo can't make anti-air units. So Naniwa's doing great. Don't want to jump on that boat yet. Let's wait till something noteworthy happens, and then try to learn from it. Warp Gate coming out. A Phoenix. Ew, a little Phoenix. We see Duckload going for his usual 3-gate stuff. Let's see if he gets an Immortal. Let's see what sort of units he makes. Alright, no, it looks like he's going directly for a Robotics Bay. The Phoenix now coming out. Alright, the Phoenix is going to be poking around. Wow, he's being very bold with that Phoenix. A lot of people tend to just chill a little bit. They kind of like to build up 3-4 Phoenixes before they move forward. But, oh, a cancel for White-rA. Now, that's something that's sticking out in my mind. I'm not going to call it ahead or behind quite yet, but I am just going to mentally note that seems pretty darn important. And White-rA, wow, expanding. That's pretty darn significant. So right now, I've only really identified 2 significant things that have happened. One is this choice to go Stargate for yellow. And then for red to have canceled and immediately expanded. Those are the 2 biggies that are sort of sticking out for me. Wow, and it looks like this push is just getting to walk right up. Oh, man, that is looking mighty good for yellow. Wow, Zuz. Let's see how he ends up responding. Okay, I have some thoughts on that. It looked like kind of a little bit of a misstep from Duckload, but you know what? I think that he's doing a pretty smart thing with this cannon defense. That there's so many Phoenixes. I like how he's lifting just 1 at a time. I think that's quite a good play. Sometimes people will lift 5 at a time, then none of the Phoenixes are even participating in the shooting. Going to continue watching. I'm still having some thoughts. I hope you are having some too, because again, we always kind of want to review when these key moments happen. Because this one didn't really feel like a micro mistake. It felt like a decision mistake. And we even see the 4 gateways just churning out units as well. Cannons up, and it looks like White-rA ain't going to be able to stay alive too good here. So it does look like Duckload ended up giving the GG. Okay, so cool. Let's go back to around when I was starting to feel some sort of weirdness occur. Which is, I would say, right when the Phoenix got revealed. Notice how quick and easy it is to hone down. Oh, that sucks so much! Have you ever hit hold position on your sentries and accidentally hit G for Guardian Shield? So you're like, stay put, sentries, stay right here. And they go, and you're like, oh my god. It's like the worst feeling in the world.
what's even worse is when one of your buddies is like, I'll use Sean's computer when he's out of town, and he won't mind if I switch it to the grid hotkey setup. I'll mind. And I'll make sure my manager kicks you out of the house for next year's lease. Oh! Blasting them. Yes, yes indeed. Let's go back to the game. Notice how quickly we're able to hone in on when, like, the significant moment happened. Just because of something that just felt huge, right? This sort of cancel go down. Now, there's a couple of things we want to ask ourselves. The first and easiest one to do is just to say, was this microed well? Was everything controlled properly here? Let's see here. Well, a little bit of misclickery going on by Duckload. Not horrendous, but you know what? It's kind of hard to have a decent amount of units pop out here. You know what? Yeah, that was kind of a little bit of a rough spot there for Duckload. I mean, these Phoenix, I think, could have pushed a little bit longer and harder. So I want to think, is there a way for him to have gotten some kind of extra defense or responded in some way that was a little bit better? Because now that I sort of saw that battle, I'm like, Duckload didn't really have that much stuff. So I think that I actually want to go to the Duckload cam. I want to see, when did he end up seeing that guy move in there? Okay, so there he is. He sees it now. It looks like he's going to cancel the Robo. I like that play. I actually don't think that's... I don't really think that's too bad, right? Because, I mean, hell, what are we going to do? Get a Colossus and have let his Phoenixes have their way? Oh, goodness, no. Definitely sounds like a bad choice. So let's continue to look here. Let's continue to explore. And it looks like he's cutting production a little bit. I have these warp gates selected. Here comes the huge, no, just a couple of Phoenixes. So he's warping in one Stalker. Let's see if he continues to warp units in. Wow, no, it looks like, okay, so we could have warped in 2 sentries there. There's one Stalker getting warped in. I wonder where the rest of those units are. Have they already moved out? Huh, yeah. And the Forge going down. Yeah, you know, part of me feels like if this Forge didn't get built, that could have been 2 more Stalkers, right? Because, like, just a few seconds ago, right? Actually, just 15 seconds ago, let's actually get it to here. Now, look at the way these things are elapsing. Right when that finishes, if we didn't build this Forge, we'd have almost 200. Like, right here, we'd have enough to be able to build almost 2 Stalkers. But instead, we can't. So, when I look at the unit count, I see from Duckload 2 Zealots, 5 Stalkers, 2 Sentries. That seems kind of low. And I also think a big blunder was not having these Sentries by the ramp to just sort of force field. Gotta be a little careful because the Phoenixes are great at picking off the Sentries. But I think you should at least be in a position where you can force field relatively quickly. Maybe it might not have even been a bad idea to get an Immortal up, but still, this sort of push is a little tough to deal with. In terms of the aftermath part, like, so I do feel like that White-rA's at a disadvantage, so we can just see by looking at the food counts. Part of me doesn't quite like this Nexus. Doesn't really like it that much. So this is where kind of a lot of thought happens, right? For what am I going to do next time? Because sometimes there's the easy, obvious blunder, right? There's the sort of, oh, what went really wrong here? Oh, I guess I completely got supply blocked here. Better not do that next time. But in this circumstance, well, from White-rA's point of view, I really think that, I'm starting to think things like, well, maybe instead of canceling and then immediately taking the Nexus, you should cancel and then immediately build a Forge and build a cannon and then expand, or something along those lines. Because, I mean, Naniwa is doing some pretty hardcore Phoenixing action. And for any of you who've never played against a big-time Phoenixing player, cannons are very, very effective against that style of play, just for the sole purpose of that they can't lift the cannon up in the air. So what I'm doing, and you're hearing me sort of flop between these, is I'm thinking, well, if his production timing was a little bit better, maybe he could have held off that attack. And in terms of general decision-making in the game, maybe you just could have gotten the Forge up earlier. I don't know which one I necessarily prefer. It's pretty darn close. So that's the point where I would really want to sit down with a friend and test both of them. Because you'll note that this game's pretty freaking close, right? Or, excuse me, pretty freaking short. However, I still will note, I think our analysis is correct that first attack is really when White-rA began to fall behind. Look at the food counts. They're about the same, Oop, Naniwa getting a little bit ahead, but not that much. And here comes the attack, and yeah, it looks like Naniwa is ahead by quite a bit, right? So, I mean, very simple way to just be like, yeah, hey, I certainly know when that key moment happened. It's when I lost everything. That's pretty freaking clear. Can't be more clear than that. Yeah, now, at the same time, you'll notice that I did that mainly from White-rA's point of view. Part of the reason why I did that from White-rA's point of view is because I thought it was like a little bit more of a typical play that White-rA was doing, and Naniwa was doing kind of an unorthodox play. And I want to try to find a key moment where things sort of flopped in one player's direction or the other. In other words, I kind of wanted to find where a potential blunder occurred or where a potential key play occurred. This whole build that Naniwa's doing is pretty darn straightforward to execute. You just build out of 2 gateways, get a lot of phoenixes, check out what he's doing. And if for some reason Naniwa did that attack and got just slaughtered, I would want to watch from Naniwa's point of view and go, okay, this play is designed to go in there and kill him pretty hard, pretty fast, pretty easily. It's designed to do that. But it didn't do that in this case. Why? That's the sort of thing that I really want to look for, right? So, in that particular circumstance, it was kind of like, wow, well, in that game, Duckload kind of should have held that off. In all theory, if he's playing a defensive style, he should be able to defend things. But something didn't go wrong. Why? And that's generally the key moment logic. So let's go ahead. Oh my goodness, I've revealed the time. I've spoiled everything. Oh, thank God this is an analysis show where we don't care about results. So we're going to go ahead and do again our little key moment analysis. Anytime I start to see something huge, I'll go ahead and take a look. Like, that is a big difference in time on those gateways. So, you know, generally you've seen me blast through the early stages of the game. Generally you've seen me blast through that. Let's see. Alright, is it a 10 gate from Naniwa? Yep, it's a 10 gate. Okay, cool. And looks like a pretty typically timed gate from Duckload. Gate on 12. A little earlier than most. Like, Huck gets his on 14, 13 sometimes. But 10 is definitely early. Look at that. Cyber Core before second pylon. Wowzers. And it looks like he has spotted it. Okay. Again, you're seeing me do the same thing I've done in the last 3 games. I'm really focusing on the first big difference. In the last game, it was the Stargate. In the first game, it was the fact that one player was going Colossus and the other wasn't. So here I'm kind of going, wow, Naniwa, you're getting a 10 frickin' gate up. Chrono boosting and now getting 3 warp gates. Okay, wow, so he's going to have 4 total. Is Duckload going to expand? Well, he's doing a very smart thing, sort of closing off the entrance to his base. Let's see how this ends up turning out. Well, wow, that's actually a pretty darn nice timing. I have used the phrase pretty darn much in this particular daily. Alright, so I'm going to continue warping forward. It looks like Duckload doing a kind of a delay play. He sees the push coming, and alright, he manages to block it pretty effectively. Oh, another kind of missed block, but at least he's doing a good amount of damage. I already feel like those force fields and preparing as Duckload was the quote-unquote key moment. Wow, yeah, this is just beautifully done by Duckload. Holy crap. And we'll end up reviewing this in a moment, but again, very, very common, important, easy tactic, or excuse me, easy technique when analyzing your replays is to do a lot of this sort of thing, where you're kind of going, wow, okay, this is just looking terrible for one of the players. And then just think back to when that actually happened. So, you know what, I'm actually going to rewind right now. I mean, I can actually pretty clearly state that White-rA is at an overwhelming advantage. So, the key moment, when all of a sudden the game swung in one person's favor, when all of a sudden the game swung into Duckload's favor, just want to go ahead and check the Duckload cam.
it looks like, no, he is actually not aware that there is this cyber core and all these gateways almost done warping in. So he is just going straight up for a 3-gate. So I just want to briefly double check. It looks like, okay, so he gets his sentries up really fast. And this wall off, this is kind of a map-specific thing. Players love warping in over this bridge and then running in zealots from behind so they can see up on the high ground. So Duckload's just, you know, this just seems like a good set of map experience. Wouldn't call it the key game-changing decision-making moment. This is more of the, I prepare a hell of a lot, and that's what I get as a reward. Here comes Naniwa with 5 Stalkers. This is exactly why people do this push, is because they get 5 Stalkers out fast when your opponent does not have that many. So let's see how this key moment looks, and yeah, there it is, just pulling back and appropriately throwing down a force field. Sometimes you see players throw the force field down here, like really far down. This is kind of cute because it means that if you get just a little bit of an arc on the high ground, you can do a lot of damage to those units there. And he's continuing to warp them in. Continue to warp in only ranged units. I would actually include that in my little, oh, this is a key play moment. Still just only ranged units to abuse this very, very, very nice positioning. And of course, force fielding to push him down. Now, if we look at these gateways, I actually think I can see it if I go to the Duckload cam. Yep, there we go. Now we can actually see them. He's still producing out of them pretty consistently. And it looks like this is another key component to the play, is to have that probe on the other end there. So here, it's going to be doing more force fields. Not ballsy with the force fields at all. Sometimes players like to try to trap 3 Stalkers up on the high ground. Just getting 1. Not a big deal. Playing very, very smart defensively. Still only ranged unit warp-ins. That is interesting. That is actually very, very cool to see. Because I'm sure a lot of you have had trouble holding off 4 gates on all sorts of maps. This is an especially hard map to hold off a 4-gate on. But this sort of only range into counter with the pylon, that's feeling really, really good to me. Even right now, though, we see that Naniwa is in kind of a horrendous situation, given that sort of amazing defense. And I think that this is awfully important to note. Ignore that this pylon even exists. Pretend for a moment with me that White-rA never got that pylon there. It's actually kind of funny that this Game 4 is the last game we're going to do today, because this really highlights the importance of finding the first moment in a game where someone whomp loses the advantage. The first moment in the game. You want to find the first time where someone really had an advantage. So again, pretend that this pylon never existed. Pretend it never existed, ever. Look at the food differential. 42 to 30. That's big. Look at the unit differential. More probes, less probes. Not as many Stalkers, but combined with Stalkers and Sentries, a much, much bigger army for Duckload. And in fact, if Duckload chose to warp into his base right now, he would have a bigger army than Naniwa. What does this mean? This means that White-rA, aka Red, or Duckload, or whatever the hell he is, that man is already at the advantage. He already did the key thing that let him swing ahead. Way too many people will watch this game and go, oh, that's bullshit. If Naniwa just scouted his own base, he would have won. My ass, he would have won. Look at that food differential, 50 to 35. No way. White-rA just macros a little more, can easily continue probe production, and he can do a direct frontal attack and win. Very, very easily. I mean, one thing I haven't even mentioned in this game is that Naniwa's only had 1 geyser the whole game. Look at this. Full gas. Both of these are getting mined from. Wow, they have actually a lot of gas mined from, about 1,000 total. So we can clearly see that the key moment in this game is actually not those zealots. The key moment was this defense that happened early on. We're going to speed it up a little bit as my replay bar did not quite go to the right spot. See Nani a little bit behind on food, which is normal if you're going for an Ultra 4 warp gate, but now we see he catches right on up with that first warp in. And let's look at the food. Let's look at the food, right? This is always a good indication. It's good, damn it. Alright, so, okay. And, oh, wow. It looks like, well, still kind of close. I guess after you throw down 3 or 4 force fields, you're going to be in pretty darn good shape. Yeah, wow. Ooh, already 10 food ahead, repelling these zealots. Ooh, maybe almost getting another kill. Lost almost no units there. Wow! 30 to 42 food. That is the key moment in this game. That is the essential component. The fact that White-rA was able to defend that with the really fast force field. So now what I think is, if I ever go for some sort of 12 or 13 gate on Jungle Basin, I want to be going Stalker, Sentry really, 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 really fast. Because it looks like it holds off a 10 gate into 4 warp gate very, very easily. Neat. Cool. I learned a thing. Now let's actually just blast through the end of the game. And then take some questions. And then let me go to bed. I'm so sleepy. Looks like picking off some zealots, picking off some of this stuff. It looks like Ducklo didn't do as much damage with his Warpin as he would have liked, but that's actually okay. I mean, we're still seeing the effects of him being so far ahead. I mean, hell, look at the probe count, 31 to 24. Ooh, we even see a Dark Shrine coming up. Blink coming up from Naniwa. This is a pretty common follow-up, because Blink is another way of saying, I have the advantage of my micro. Which is also another way of saying, I think I'm totally fucked and can only micro my way in. So there's the DTs, and they just, like, walk their way in. Now, what's funny to me is that that's the first time I've seen that game. I watched that, and we watched the 4 warp gate happen, and, oh, yeah, that was clearly the moment when White-rA was, like, a million years ahead. But interestingly, a very unusual strategy came out of Duckload after the fact. The Dark Templar plus Warp Prism play. Very, 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 very uncommon, right? But that's not what won him the game. That's what wrapped the game up, but not what won him the game. That amazing defense plus his economy, that's what won him the game. That's what excites me. That's what should excite you too. Because too often you'll see a player get battered and bashed apart by a 4-gate. He'll be down 28 food to his opponent's 38 food. And he'll say, oh, but I saw White-rA go for Dark Templar. And then they'll try to do it. And it wasn't the Dark Templar that won. It was the economy that won. That is what's so important. Let's go ahead and take some questions. Alright, let's go ahead and go into here. Let's see here. Kinda 689 says, Dear Day 9, I like what White-rA did with spotting on low ground range against the high ground base. Do you think Zerg could use spotting overlords to get low ground Roach Hydra arcs versus Wallins or sentries? I mean, yeah. The reason I was kind of like, totally, of course, is because that question, the thing that kind of bugs me about that question is that, like, that obviously sounds great, right? What could really be bad about using an Overlord or an Overseer to see up the high ground? I can't really think of one. And I feel like a lot of people come up with ideas a lot of times and they'll ask. And, I mean, I honestly think I kind of want to say, trust your own intuition, you know? Like, you know, Dear Kindness 689. That's a great point. Do that more. That sounds awesome. I would love to see more stuff like that. So if you've thought about it and you're kind of and you're kind of torn, try to think of some issues, you know? Because a lot of times people will say stuff like, do you think that it would have been wise to try to get this unit, even though it would have taken a lot of time? So now that's something that requires some thought and decision-making. But, you know, just a statement of, you know, Zerg can use high ground to spot up. Yeah, that's awesome. Totally use that. And trust yourself. If you come up with more stuff like that, do it. Totally do it and be awesome with it. Let's see here. Fadil says, Dear Day 9, do you think if White-rA held off expanding and just built more gateways or a Forge or Twilight Council, he could have held off Naniwa's attack more effectively? I assume this is in reference to the only game that White-rA lost, which was the Phoenix game. That one, that's actually really close. When I watched that, I kind of had this, you know, because 3 Stalkers, it's very easy to build a few extra structures, not afford 3 Stalkers, and you would have won if you had those 3 Stalkers, something like that, you know? It's kind of like, it's a little close. It requires testing. That's really what I would say. Anytime you hit a point where you think, I don't know, that means you need to sit down, you need to play the game. A lot of things end with the question, or end with the conclusion, yeah, God, I really guess I'd go need to We need to go play and test that out. There's not actually huge amounts of stuff that doesn't require testing. I mean, for instance, sometimes I can just say, from my knowledge, in practice, cannons work well against phoenixes. In that case, I just happen to know because I tested it beforehand. But anytime you get to a point where you're like, write out all the different possible permutations and test each one 5 or 6 times. Really important to have a practice buddy. So for me, I would be like, well, it looks like I see phoenixes. I guess I'm going to cancel my robo. Let me try adding another gateway. Let me try expanding and not adding on anything else, just making out of my current gateways. Let me try canceling the robo and then going immortal in 3 gate. And then you try to test these out and you see how it works out. Very, 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 very important. Let's see here. From Huntler. This is a killer question. Dear Day 9, in PvP like last game, 4 gating on Scrap Station is overwhelmingly common. So again, the 10 gate into 4 warp gate, the very, very, very fast one. It's especially the 10 gate variation is common. Do you think White-rA would need to modify the timing of his defense to hold that off? Because let me actually illustrate exactly what Huntler is referring to. It happens right here around about the 5.5 minute mark when that warp gate ends up finishing. Should be around 5.5 minutes. Yeah, there it is, 5.5 minutes. That's good. That's, again, something that's totally testing based. So it looks like we get 2 sentries out just in time. Whew, damn, that's close. Yeah, wow. I do not know at all. So, that's actually another one of those cases that's really, really close. On Scrap Station, you actually need 2 force fields to get thrown down really quickly. That's a tough one. Yeah, I guess it would just require a hell of a lot of testing. Most important thing that I would note in terms of testing, start with small changes first. For me, the first change I would make is saving Chrono Boost to Chrono Boost out my gateway units a little faster. Save up Chrono Boost to Chrono Boost out my warp gates as fast as possible. Do this, do that, maybe let his stuff up the ramp, lose 2 or 3 probes, but hold anyways, and expect to come out ahead. Requires a lot of testing. But what excites me about that sort of question is that it emphasizes the key moment, right? This defense was the key moment in this game. In all of the games we looked at today, there was a key moment. So if your question should always kind of relate down to the key moment part. You want to be able to identify what went right and wrong about that and how it would change in certain situations. So that's it. It's going to wrap up the daily for today. Let's see here. Next week's Fun Day Monday, very simple one. For next week's Fun Day Monday, please submit a game of you playing a game with any race where you never expand to your natural. You can expand to any other base, just not your natural. I need to announce next week's Newbie Tuesday, which I had, but I can't remember. I guess this is continuation of the theme of not being able to prepare because I was sprinting back from class. Let's see. What was next week's Newbie Tuesday? I know it was a Terran-related one because I did the Nidus Worm Fun Day Monday and the other Protoss Fun Day Monday. So what was it again? Oh yeah, I totally remember. Totally remember. Sorry, jeez. Oh, goodness. For any of you who have not seen Jinro vs. MC, cover your ears. In Jinro vs. MC, we saw Jinro go for a mech-type play with Terran. Most Terran players go for a Marine Marauder style. I would like you guys to try to do some mech Terran play in Terran vs. Protoss and send those games to me. Mech in Terran vs. Protoss. The reason I want to do that is because Marine Marauder is very mobile, very fluid, can move everywhere at once, hit him in 10 places, really fast. Mech is generally not, and Mech does actually rely on a lot of immobility and a lot of slow expanding. So send those to Tuesday at day9.tv. Again, I'm actually going to announce some dates here for the 24th of January's Fun Day Monday.
Submit that to Monday at day9.tv, the no expanding one, and for the 25th of January is Newbie Tuesday. That's going to be the mech one. Send those to Tuesday at day9.tv. And I'm done. Bye. Bam. See ya.